The introduction. It was a crisp autumn morning in the small town of Maple Grove, where the leaves bled into shades of amber and brown. A thick fog settled over the ground, shrouding the neighborhood in a veil of uncertainty. Whispers of Halloween approached, but the townsfolk were more concerned with the chilling events that were about to unfurl. On this particular morning, a couple walking their dog stumbled upon something more than just fallen leaves and scattered acorns. Tucked beneath a dense thicket at the edge of Maple Grove Park, they uncovered a decaying leather bag, its sides worn and shabby. The dog's excited barking mingled with the rustling leaves as they inched closer. Curiosity sparked amidst an underlying dread. As the couple pulled the bag free from its earthy tomb, they opened it to find a collection of personal items. A frayed notebook filled with desperate scribblings. A weathered photo of a young woman with vivid blue eyes. And a silver locket that glinted even in the morning haze. The woman's face, framed by a wild halo of dark curls, smiled back through the edgy's stark contrast to the somber reality surrounding the bag's discovery. What the couple did not know was that this seemingly benign moment would plunge their quiet town into a web of mysteries long buried and unresolved. The cries for justice would soon rise from the depths of Maple Grove as echoes of the past resonated within the community, darkening an otherwise serene landscape. The victim. The young woman in the photograph was identified as Sarah Mitchell, a 24-year-old artist who had recently moved to Maple Grove in search of inspiration. Her vibrant artwork was celebrated locally. However, her life behind the canvas was far less enchanting. Friends and acquaintances would later describe her as warm-hearted, but perpetually restless, already holding dreams larger than the confines of simple small-town life. A sense of inherent melancholy lived within her, unrecognized by those who only saw the striking smile she wore. In the days following the discovery of the bag, the police wasted no time in launching an investigation. They gathered statements from neighbors and interrogated her closest friends, piecing together the last moments of Sarah's life. It was a Friday when she was last seen leaving a local cafe, her sketchbook in hand, heading towards the path that wound through the park. A sketch of an old-fashioned street lamp, tantalizing her artistic impulse. As questions piled up and uncertainty loomed, the community's collective anxiety mounted, giving way to concocted rumors of Sarah's disappearance. Some whispered about her involvement with an elusive figure seen lurking near the edges of town, while others speculated on darker motive places where secrets seemed to fester beneath the town's polished surface. But nothing could have prepared the residents for the reality they were about to face. Beneath the layers of hushed conversations and vacant stares lay the shadows of past grievances, intertwining with Sarah's story. Each revelation seemed to echo louder than the last, pulling the town deeper into a haunting realization. Sarah's artistic dream was about to become a reflection of their own buried darkness. The crime scene. As the sun sank behind the horizon, casting long shadows across Maple Grove, a somber scene unfolded in the depths of the park. Police cars, their blue and red lights swirling through the fog, adorned the entrance with an uneasy authority. Impressions of impending autumn enveloped the air. Leaves crunched underfoot as officers moved with a sense of urgency, cataloging evidence and preserving the integrity of the scene. The area where Sarah's bag had been found was now roped off with bright yellow tape, creating a stark boundary between the mundane world of the town and the inconceivable reality within it. Investigators gathered, using flashlights to pierce the mantle of dusk, illuminating the ground around them. An initial search of the area yielded various mundane items: lost baseball, crumpled fast food wrappers, reminders of the park's everyday life. But their heightened senses soon led them deeper into the thicket, where the underbrush concealed its secrets. A shallow grave, partially concealed by tangled roots and scattered leaves, held the dark weight of discovery. The sight was unnerving. Earth was disturbed, a sign that something vile had once taken place. Anxiety gripped the investigating officers as they stumbled upon the remnants of a series of pale pink fabric scraps, eerily similar to the dress Sarah had worn in the photograph. As the minutes dragged on, the gravity of their finding began to sink in. It wasn't merely a missing persons case, but rather an investigation that ushered in the specter of violence that had not been seen in their community's history. The bonds the residents had built over years were beginning to fray, revealing the disquiet that had lingered just beneath their serene surroundings. What dark truths would the void hidden beneath the thinning foliage uncover? The early investigation, with the discovery of Sarah's bag and the grim implications surrounding it, the Maple Grove Police Department launched their early investigation with a fervor that had not been seen in years. Detective Laura Wells, seasoned yet jaded by the haunting cases of her past, took the lead. Determined to balance her intuition with methodical investigation, she began to assemble a timeline of Sarah's last days, piecing together who she had seen and what she had done. Detective Wells first turned to Sarah's friends, who had reported her absence in early panic, but were now engulfed by guilt and dread. She met with Rebecca Hargrove at the local diner where they often gathered. Over steaming cups of coffee, Rebecca recounted the last vibrant conversation they had shared, filled with artistic aspirations and dreams of gallery openings. However, a shadow fell over her words as she recalled how Sarah had been increasingly withdrawn in the days leading up to her disappearance, hinting at a recent tumultuous relationship with a man she called Parker. Parker's name rang a bell. Whispers amongst the townsfolk described a drifter with a reputation for paranoia, known to hang around the outskirts of Maple Grove. This newly unraveled like a fraying thread, but also presented complexities that lay beyond. There were accusations of violence, vague references to heated arguments, and a few unsettling rumors about Parker's history. Fueled by urgency, Detective Wells expanded her investigation, searching for security footage from the cafe and circling back to the few neighbors who lived close to the park. Each interaction added more layers to Sarah's story, but also thickened the fog of uncertainty that surrounded her death. As the pieces began to accumulate, it became painfully clear. Maple Grove had secrets that festered in quiet desperation. And with every lead, the dead ends. As days turned into weeks, the initial momentum of the investigation began to sputter, and frustration gnawed at Detective Laura Wells. The evidence gathered from cafes and neighbors pointed to disarray rather than clarity. Each lead that once seemed promising now transformed into elusive shadows, slipping through her fingers like grains of sand. The detective returned to the cafe several times, hopeful to capture something overlooked at a fleeting glance, a whispered confession. Security footage showed Sarah smiling, sketching, and interacting with patrons, but it painted no clear picture of her final hour. Rebecca's claims about Parker hung in the air, but when officers tracked him down at his temporary residence, they met only dead ends. It appeared he had vanished into thin air, leaving behind nothing but anxious neighbors and unanswered questions. Fingers tightened around the stifling spiral of missed opportunities, and rumors sprouted like weeds among the townsfolk. Each conversation at the grocery store and each nervous exchange at the post office swirled into a cacophony of speculation and fear. The community became consumed with anxiety, heightened by their connection to the victim, a soon vanished artist who had become one of their own. Despite the bleak economy of information, Detective Wells pressed on. She delved deeper into Sarah's life, exploring her social media presence and any writings from the notebook found with the bag. It revealed glimmers of heartbreak through scratched gripes and unfulfilled dreams. However, even this window into her soul yielded little to go on, leaving Wells with more questions than answers. Each path she explored led only to the tantalizing sense of someone watching from the periphery, sinister and out of reach. A break in the case. Weeks passed under heavy clouds, shrouding Maple Grove in an overwhelming sense of gloom. Just when the investigation reached a seemingly insurmountable stalemate, a serendipitous break arrived on an otherwise quiet Thursday morning. The police received a phone call from a local mechanic named Frank, who had unexpectedly been drawn to a particularly worn vehicle in his Chopin dark sedan, bearing a few chipped spots on the bumper, matching the description of a car seen parked near the park in Sarah's last known hours. Frank had recognized the vehicle as suspicious. It had sat in the lot for far too long, accompanied by an unfamiliar man who often seemed to linger in the shadows, avoiding direct contact with anyone. A rush of adrenaline filled Detective Wells as she rushed to the small, grease-stained garage, hope igniting in her chest. Breathing in the tangy scent of oil and metal, she quickly identified the sedan, while Frank recounted his observations in a quivering voice laced with regret. Pragmatic police work ensued. The vehicle was traced back to a rental agency, and a quick internet search revealed it was rented under the name of Parker Warina, name unavoidably tied to Sarah. Detective Wells was resolute as she coupled this newfound clue with the scant information gathered about Parker's whereabouts, piecing together a clearer picture of his potential involvement. As officers canvassed the area where the vehicle had been parked, they received an anonymous tip directing them towards an abandoned cabin hidden within the woods, bordering Maple Grove, approximately a mile away from where Sarah had disappeared. Heightened anticipation coursed through the air as Wells and her team prepared to venture into the darkness, hearts racing with the promise of revelation. Suddenly, hope returned, the kind that had been frail for so long, flickering like a candle against the storm. The case hung in the balance, and the detectives could almost feel the ghost of Sarah Mitchell pulling them closer to the truth. The suspect. The cabin loomed ahead, overtaken by nature's relentless reclamation. Weathered wood, splintered and gray, seemed to sag under the weight of its own secrets. As Detective Wells and her team cautiously approached, shadows danced ominously among the trees like specters of the past. She felt her heart race knowing that they could be one step closer to unearthing the truth behind Sarah's tragic fate. They entered the cabin, weapons drawn and eyes sweeping the dimly lit interior. Dust particles shimmered in the air, stirred only by the creaking floorboards beneath their feet. The place reeked of abandonment and neglect, but signs of recent habitation were evident. A half-finished meal sat on a rickety table. Alongside hastily hidden belongings, a stack of magazines, a frayed backpack, and an empty picture frame with no photo to be found. Just then, a rustling sound erupted from a back room, sending a jolt of adrenaline through the officers. Detective Wells shouted for the occupant to come out, but silence enveloped them, thickening the tension. Sensing imminent danger, they moved carefully to apprehend whoever may be hiding. Suddenly, Parker Warren burst forth, eyes wild and skin ghostly. The suspect's electoral. Detective Wells's breath quickened as her instinct screamed that this man held answers to the questions that had plagued her since Sarah's disappearance. He lunged for the door, but officers were swift, tackling him to the ground, handcuffs clinking into place with a resounding finality. After Parker was subdued and placed in the back of a police cruiser, Detective Wells engaged him with focused intensity. "Where is Sarah?" she demanded, non-threatening yet unwavering. Parker's eyes darted nervously, glistening with the weight of guilt and fear as fragments of a story began to form. An argument, desperation, choices that had spiraled out of control. The knife's edge of truth was tantalizingly close, and the edge of resolution was finally within reach. The trial. The courtroom buzzed with a somber anticipation as the trial of Parker Warren commenced. Families of the Maple Grove community filled the wooden benches, their faces etched with the grief of losing one of their own. Detectives and legal representatives filled the small room, crafting narratives around a tragedy that had shattered their town's sense of safety and routine. Detective Wells sat quietly in the corner, her mind retracing the threads of evidence and emotions that had bound Sarah's fate to Parker's hands. As the proceedings began, the judge's voice rang out, requesting order from the crowded gallery. Parker entered, his demeanor markedly different from the frantic man captured in the cabin. Now he sat solemnly, shoulders slumped, as the weight of the enormity of his actions began to settle into tragedy he had created, now unfolding in front of an attentive audience. Witnesses took the stand, each laying bare their memories of Sarah and their emotional connection to her art, life, and loss of pain, palpable in their voices. Rebecca's testimony stirred the room. She described how Sarah had confided in her about an obsession that had crept into her life-year relationship with a man who had initially captivated her, but eventually ensnared her in an atmosphere of fear and control. When Detective Wells stood to present the evidence, she methodically unraveled the narrative that led them to the cabin. The courtroom listened intently as she recounted the chain of events that had unfolded since Sarah's disappearance, her art, her dreams, and ultimately, her tragic end. She revealed the dark details unearthed during the investigation, the heated arguments, the threats, and the mounting fear that had culminated in a shocking confession of guilt from Parker. The tension hung in the air, thick with despair yet intermingled with hope for closure. The jury absorbed the gravity of their decision, weighed by the consequences that spanned beyond the walls of the courtroom. Parker's haunting gaze seemed to search for absolution, but the truth was a relentless tide, crashing against the fragile facade of innocence he hesitated to maintain. Ultimately, the fate of a community rested upon their verdict, one that could finally set the course for healing, amidst an irreparable loss. The aftermath. The gavel fell, reverberating through the silent courtroom, echoing the conclusion of Parker Warren's trial. His guilty verdict stirred a whirlpool of emotions within the air. Some residents wore expressions of relief, as if lifted from a heavy weight, while others remained shrouded in sorrow, a sorrow that would not be easily assuaged after losing Sarah Mitchell, an artist whose dreams would never materialize. In the days that followed, the heart of Maple Grove pulsed slowly, adjusting to the new reality. Detective Wells found herself reflecting on the case, revisiting the moments that had unfolded. She often strolled through the park where Sarah had spent her last days, her eyes scanning the familiar trails that now held an unshakable grief. Each rustling leaf whispered reminders of promises left unfulfilled, while the chill in the air felt like a tender mourning, a community paying homage to a spirit forever lost. A vigil was held in Sarah's honor, drawing townsfolk together. Candles flickered in the encroaching darkness, casting soft light on painted canvases showcasing her work. A colorful testament to her life. It revealed her passion, the vibrancy that had once lit up the local gallery, and, in turn, had darkened an entire town. The pain of loss was palpable in the silence, yet amidst the mourning emerged a collective sense of resolution. Stories were shared of Sarah's kindness. Her laughter revitalized memories woven into the fabric of their community. A foundation was subsequently formed in her name, aimed at providing support for local artists and initiative birthed from tragedy, but fueled by hope. Months passed, and as spring began to unfurl its colors across Maple Grove, a new sense of determination took root. Detective Wells took solace in knowing that while the gavel had struck against Parker, justice had birthed new possibilities and opportunity for healing and transformation. The darkness that had loomed over the town slowly receded, like fog dissipating under the sun, revealing a landscape that would never be quite the same but was finally ready to move forward. Reflection. As the seasons turned, Detective Laura Wells thoughtfully wandered through the now familiar trails of Maple Grove Park. The air was crisp, filled with the refreshing scent of blooming flowers that once again decorated the landscape. Sarah's story lingered in the minds of the townsfolk, etching itself into the collective conscience of the community. Wells found solace in her decision to honor Sarah through the art foundation that flourished in her memory. Every exhibit showcased new talent while celebrating the spirit of creativity that had been silenced too soon. It became a bastion of hope, a sanctuary where budding artists could flourish, drawing inspiration from the pain and loss that had imbued the town, with a deeper understanding of life's fragility. Sitting on a bench where Sarah once sketched her surroundings, Detective Wells contemplated the profound interconnectedness of their lives. Each brushstroke, each whisper of wind through the trees, and every fleeting moment of joy shared was significant. The darkness may have briefly enveloped Maple Grove, but the town had proven resilient. As she absorbed the peaceful scenery, Wells smiled softly, allowing the burden of sorrow to lift, if only slightly. It was a testament to the thin line between joy and grief, and a reminder that even in the darkest of times, healing could emerge through art, community, and the unwavering human spirit.